honestly don't know the answer to that, Michael.
They don't
seem to have a lot of money. I mean, they're probably going to be able to come up.
Some people suppose they're backed by pharmaceutical companies or shills. But, I don't know.
Is he their guy, though?
No, I don't think.
Here's an article from Vice about just this topic. It says the largest donors to the various anti-weed political groups around the country include a billionaire casino tycoon, a woman who believes in reefer madness, a drug-crusading former U.S. ambassador, cops, prison guards, booze merchants, and a pharma company that sells the powerful painkiller fentanyl.
Yeah, that's accurate. Well, Sheldon Adelson is and there's just some woman in Florida, and all that. They've got some pretty deep pockets, but, again, I think you were there was a kind of summit. I know, Jamie, you were there. It was at Ulm of Medicine, and that Congressman Blumenauer came in, and we were talking about Sheldon Adelson, and we were all giving these what-if scenarios in Michigan. And what if somebody like Sheldon Adelson comes in and dumps, $10 million or, something like that? And his belief was that Sheldon Adelson has basically lost every time, except I think he maybe put a little money into Arizona, but his main state, Nevada, he lost. And the idea was he's not going to waste his money anymore. And I guess apparently with the Adelsons, they had some kid, one of their kids got, hooked on drugs or something like that. And
another fanatic.
Yeah. And that was the motivation. But again, I did an interview. It's going to come out with Josh Hovey for the magazine. I'll give you a little tidbit. Josh Hovey was the main person that I interviewed. And, and he was telling me, I was asking about TV. And he said they were not making any decision at this point, that they got the money about doing TV. I'm thinking that with the way things are going, they might want to do TV. Okay, now, that was a moment in time, but, I mean, again, we'll see. I do have, like I say, this is not happy news, this poll, believe me. I tend to doubt it. I think at core, intellectually, that it's just, it's a kind of con game that's being perpetrated. Again, as a way of defeating it. Are those numbers really true? I have my serious doubts that they are true.
Maybe they polled themselves only. It
was an auto poll. It was an auto
right.
poll. It was a robot poll, and generally those things only go to people with landlines.
And nobody really has a landline. They must have really had to scrape hard to find
folks
at home with landlines.
Yeah, I always had one in Detroit, and it was great. I mean, I liked taking polls. I didn't mind. It was no big deal. But since I moved out to Grand Junction, we were able to get a landline.
Can't get a signal out there.
I've never been polled in going on 4 years since I moved out there. I'm just off the grid.
Yeah, see, that's what I'm saying. Who are they polling? And you have to consider who's got a landline. And it's basically elderly people or, people who are not real savvy.
Like my mom and dad, they're and a lot of those folks, they're not into technology and just comfortable with the way it is. And
I'm surprised they're able to keep people on the phone because they read them the whole proposal. That's what the claim is.
It
wasn't the proposal.
No, it was a robot.
Ballot language.
The ballot language.
Yeah. That's what I mean. They read them the ballot language. So it's hard to engage somebody on the phone for more than a couple seconds on something like this. So
this was a robot. And again, my inclination, if the robot reaches somebody that hates marijuana, they're probably going to want to answer the poll.
Yeah.
And somebody that likes it, I mean, it's like how do you do a poll in Detroit on marijuana? All right, if you listen to some of these preachers and authority figures, like way back when, Conway Kilpatrick and all these characters, oh my God, you think it was going to go straight to hell? It's going to be right down the toilet. But in the quiet, and no, I mean, again, this is anecdotal, but all the black folks that I know, I mean, they were very, very careful. Well, no, marijuana, oh, gee, I don't know about that. Yeah, and there's always, if you interact personally, you're not going to get any favorable. They don't want to talk about, but in the privacy of the voting booth, what the hell? Medical won 59%. This is back in 2004. Recreational won in 2012 was 65%. And oh, by the way, medical in 2008, when it was on the statewide ballot, won 74% in Detroit. And why is that? Again, I did a story about this. Lamar Lemons, he's a political boss in Detroit. I worked with him quite a bit, and his organization gathered signatures for me. And he said, look, black folks are not fooled. They are going to vote yes on marijuana every time because they know that it's a tool of oppression that's being used on black folks. And even that ballot initiative, because of that was sponsored to try to change that dispensary situation. Yeah. That one. There was no ever. I mean, it's just right out there. And what Lamar said, he said that black folks, every time you could count on black folks to vote yes because they know the game. It's just a bunch of crap. So
it's kind of distressing, isn't it? Because even the politicians that, I know, Tim, from the perspective that the Republicans had an honest debate about this. The idea of doing something about the ballot initiative, their decisions, whatever, was, at least it was vetted. And addressing it, the police, on the other hand, are not really contemplating it. They're coming out against it. They're declaring it negative. They're not acknowledging that voters may want it. No. This troubles me. The proffering of, intellectually dishonest materials, creating fear. I mean, when
this is politics.
It's not.
This is nothing
interesting,
new.
Though. It's interesting, though. Let's talk about a couple of factors. Michigan ranked 48th in transparency or, lack of integrity. Did you see that?
Yep.
We've, the statistics speak to it. The statistics speak. Let me give you a couple of statistics here. We got violation of the Controlled Substance Act, number of victims, offenses reported, and incidents and clearance rate. So you've got a 74% conviction rate for controlled substances on the increase since the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act passed. And there's no other crime that is of any significance that finds itself above 25% arrest, except for motor vehicle theft, which is a federally funded task force that works out of Wayne County. But the point is, where are our resources? And the other problem is with all the complaining, and if you listen to, and I'd like to really address them point by point, I don't know if we're going to have time, but maybe on another show we'll go over some of the nonsense, the references, some of these, doesn't legalizing recreational marijuana contribute to freedom? Not when a market is emerging that is profiting from addiction and making products that are targeted our youth. That is a public health problem. So
you don't see any irony in that. Of
statement. Course, it's outrageous. I mean, I like to break some of this down.
But they acknowledge that addiction is a public health problem. I think that's incredibly ironic.
And they're policing it, and they don't do anything about it, of course. And they want to police it more. See, the problem is that they wrote this bill the way they wanted to. They're not acknowledging that this is going to develop into that, and their suggestion that they're not going to let it happen, they don't want it to happen, is problematic because, we're back to where we were before. They should not have the authority to impede or even contemplate the impediment of the voters' will. What took place in 2008 to date now is still one of the most offensive things to democracy that could take place. You know what I mean? It's like don't shit talk the law. I mean, I know I'm amongst friends here, but it's a poorly written law. Someone was stoned when they wrote it. Listen, it is the fucking law. Who talks like that about the? The simplest argument is intended to protect people, not used as a sword to felonize people. If there is a technical rule violation, use your goddamn discretion to call it de minimis and don't call it a felony and let it go. There could have been so many other directions the implementation of this law could have been. They looked for the nuance of ambiguity and fucked them.
Yep.
I've often wondered. I've had conversations with rank and file type officers that are on the street, and some of those guys said, "Well, wait a minute, come on, marijuana, it's sort of horse shit, but I gotta do it." No, just marijuana in general. And yet, of course, they have to do it and arrest people and on. But I've never seen that kind of vehemence from at least anecdotally ones I talked. I think where the fanaticism is coming is the top leadership, that like the police chiefs, sheriffs, that kind of thing. And keep in mind, the police is essentially a military organization. It's not a democracy in any way, shape, or form. It's organized like a military. Command proceeds from the top, it goes to the bottom, and you got to do it. You don't talk back. You follow orders. That's just how it goes. This is not the Fortune 500 where you go to the boardroom, have a discussion, and this is these people. They really have an attitude about it, and they want because it just increases their power. The more crimes you got, the more powerful you are.
The more revenue you generate.
The more revenue you generate. And the more powerful you are, and the more clout, the more you've got over somebody.
2 points that need to be made about any of this debate. I think these are the most compelling. When you step back and look at the amount of resources that are spent in the prohibition of marijuana, it's this simple. 40% of the MSP lab is used to test marijuana. 40% of whatever that budget is. Now, if you're going to complain about other crimes being delayed, swift justice,
but that's not how they look at it.
I'm just saying,
they're saying 40. You just said it. 40% of their budget is attributed to marijuana, and you wonder why these people don't want marijuana to be illegal.
Well, this is what I'm saying.
Or want marijuana to be illegal.
Let's call it what it is. Yeah. Let's say that it has been a job security, and that by proffering some of this nonsense, they should really just say, listen, we've kind of overdone ourselves here. Got a lot of people on this payroll. Clearly the city's budget of, taking taxes, real estate taxes, homeowner, is not going to cut it. Especially now that we've got that beautiful district court building in our town. Got that extra judge. We got to pay for all that. So we're going to continue to pass laws, continue to have judges, and continue to tie up all this time and effort for the easiest crime. And we're going to ignore all the other crimes that we could. That's where we're at. I said to a judge the other day, what are you going to do if this thing really happens like it is? You're going to have, he said, 30% of his docket. It's like, I know, a lot of people are going to be out of work. I said, he goes, maybe they'll focus on other crimes. I said, really?
Yeah.
Think it's going to be that easy? Think they're going to be able to give up that easy? But I'm saying, that's what this is. Let's call it what it is. It is job security. They're going to lose. It's money. They can't validate any of this.
No.
We went over point by point. It's fear-mongering. They got the fat cat forfeiture. $15 million last year. It's an easy government. Name me a company in Michigan that's making $15 million a year, every year.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, drug task forces, MSP. It's good business. Why do they want to change it?
I'll tell you here's another angle here, and I'm not a big fan of police, but I try to be as absolutely objective as possible. I cannot imagine being a cop, and every day you're basically dealing with the worst of the human condition. Really, people breaking into stuff and stealing cars and beating up the old lady, and the domestic violence, and and a lot of times, again, maybe anecdotally, but I guess a lot of so-called, criminals, yes, they do have drinking problems, they do have substance abuse problems and things like that. And when you spend your whole life dealing with that, you might begin to think that there might be a link between marijuana and crime. I'm speculating here. And Jones himself, he was telling me about his stories about being a cop, and one of this whole thing, one of his biggest objections, again, is this, this driving thing. You see so much mayhem on the road, and, if you imagine, who's there first at the scene when somebody's done some gory accident, and somebody's drunk, or somebody gets shot, or cut up, and on and on and on, and when you live with that every day, I might be able to cut some of these people some slack. But on another level, Michael, I think you make a valid point. It really is not necessary. There's plenty of other stuff around, and it's not marijuana.
But it doesn't generate revenue, and that's the problem.
Thank you, Jim. I agree. I agree.
And that's why, because you can go, and that's why those rates are so low. What's the rate for murder? It's something insanely low. And it's because when you arrest a murderer, there's no check. You arrest somebody for a large amount of marijuana, you're taking their house, you're taking their stuff, you're taking their car.
Murder, non-negligent manslaughter.
Yeah. Well, and
31% clearance rate.
There you go.
Well, and cops tend to think, from what I know and what I've read, they tend to live in a black and white world. That's what they want. They want clarity. They don't want, any kind of ambiguity. And so they tend to be, there's a moralistic streak to them again, why is prostitution illegal? Well, it's not illegal everywhere. Some places it is legal, like in Nevada and on and on. But it comes from almost a kind of moralistic point that this is indicative of poor moral character, that you're essentially a bad person. You say, and bad people need to be punished.